everyone, and welcome to this video. In this tutorial we're going to be talking about strings in Python. So we're going to talk about strings, string methods, and some operations we can perform on strings. As you might remember from the previous video where we talked about data types, strings are a sequence of characters enclosed in quotes, quotation marks. It could be single quotes, it could be double quotes. Anyone you choose to use is valid. So before we go ahead to see some examples, please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. It's very helpful to me. Thank you. So in Python, like we've seen, a string is a sequence of characters that are enclosed inside quotation marks. So let's see an example. Let's say name equals John, right? So name is the variable, John is the value. So we are telling the computer to give this value John, so that variable called name. Now this is a string. We can also create another string using double quotes. So we do hello, right? We can also create a multi-line string. So imagine you are creating a string that's very long and you need to put it on multiple lines. You can do something like this and say message will be equal to, so for a multi-line string we use 3 quotes, right? And in the middle you write your message. So you say hi everyone. Now go to the next line, lines 2, go to the next line, meet you. So using triple quotes allows us to create a multi-line strings. Now let's see some operations. Now the first operation we're going to see is called concatenation, right? So we have 2 variables called name and greet. Now let's assume we want to use these 2 together. We'll create another variable and call it greet user, right? So I'll say greet user should be equal to name plus greet. So we want to use the 2 values and assign their values to greet user variable. So I'll say go ahead and print greet user. Now when I save and run the program, I get John hello. So this is the wrong way to use it. So I'll just say greet. I'll say greet plus name. And also, as you can see, there is no space between John and hello. So we want to add some space. So I'll do that by adding space in between and then plus. And next thing I'm going to do is name. So now this is called string concatenation. We are placing them beside each other. This plus symbol is not adding. Okay, these are not integers. We cannot add them and have a sum. No, what we are doing is placing the values beside each other. So we place the value of greet first, which is hello, and then beside greet we place an empty space, and then beside the empty space we place the value of name. So now we get hello John with space in between. So when I run it, we get hello John. So we call this string concatenation. So the next thing we're going to talk about is let's talk about f strings. Now there's a lot we can do with f strings, but I will not go too deep there. Now I'll create a separate video for f strings, right? So instead of using multiple pluses, we can simply do the same thing like this. So let me assign the variables to something else. I'll say greet should be equal to hi, and I'll say name should be equal to Steve. So we can now go ahead and use f string. So I'll say print f, then you put the quote in front of it. So to use a variable inside an f string, you put it inside curly braces. So I'll say greet. So I want to use the variable name greet, then space, then another variable name called name, another variable called name. Sorry about that. And now we don't have to use multiple pluses, and you can see we get hi Steve. So I'm still going to make another video where I'll talk about f strings in detail, because there are a lot of amazing things we can do with f strings, but this video is fully on strings. So the next thing we can also do is multiplication of strings, right? So let's say you want to print a string, let's say hello, and you want to print this 5 times. You can just go ahead and do multiply by 5, and then when we save and run this program, you get hello 5 times. So let me add the space to make it a little bit. Okay, and if you want to print them on separate lines, you can simply put an end line. So this / and an n is called an end line character. So when you do that, we get hello on each line. So the next thing we're going to talk about is indexing, and now we are getting into very, very interesting territory. So let me create let me just use a word. I'll create a variable called word, right? So word should be equal to hello. So the word is hello, right? Now, because remember the definition of strings, we said strings are a sequence of characters arranged beside each other and enclosed inside quotes. So they are arranged in sequence, and now the computer needs to know how to keep track of each of these characters enclosed inside quotes, and it does that by using something called an index. So take this word for example. We have 5 letters making up this word hello, but the index starts from 0. So the first character in this word, which is H, is 0, E is 1, the first L is 2, the second L is 3, and the last character, which is O, is 4. So the length is 5, but the index is 0 to 4. And this is useful because we can now use this index to tell the computer exactly which of the characters in this variable, in this string, we want to print out. So if I go ahead, I say print word character at index 0. So what do you expect? We get H, right? We get H. So I could also go ahead and say print word, but the character at the last index. Okay, so we can do last index and print it. We get 4. But take for instance, you are working with a word that you don't know how many characters are there. You just want to print the last index, so you can simply do -1. So from the beginning we start from 0, and when you want to count from the end using index, you do -1. So when we run it, you still get the same thing. And for you to know it works, let's add one more word to it. So let's just say hello A, something like that. And when I run it, you see A is the last character in the string. So that's it. And then the next thing we can also work with is called slicing. Let me add a comment here. Indexing. So the next thing we're going to talk about is called slicing. So slicing allows us to go into the word and print which section of it we want without printing everything. So I'll just give one example, still using word. I'll say print. So the format we're going to use is, we'll take a starting index, the index where the word we want to print starts from, and the index where it will stop before. So I want to start printing from index 1, right? And I want to stop at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I want to print ELL without printing H and O. So I'll say from 1 and stop before 4. Okay, so when I do this and I print it, we get ELL. Now remember, it starts from 1, but it does not stop at 4. The reason is because the stopping index, we have to offset it by 1. If I use 3, it won't print the second L, so I have to offset it by 1 and say 4, so that way it stops right before 4. So now let's talk about some methods that we can use with strings in Python. So what are methods? Methods are functions that comes with classes. Okay, functions that we create inside classes. Now I know classes are not something we've talked about yet, it's quite an advanced topic, but classes allow us to create something that we call objects. Okay, it lets us create objects, and these objects we can manipulate them the way we want using methods. So take string, for example. String in Python is an object of the string class. Okay, it's an object of the string class. I think I have forgotten how to check for classes. I'm sorry, I don't use I don't use Python all the time, so I think it should be type. Yeah, so you see, class of string str. And now if I also create another variable, take an integer, for example. Oh, sorry, we don't use integers, so I'll just say age should be equal to 100, right? And I print the type of age, so I get a class of integer. So because these data types are created as classes in Python, we have access to objects that we can use to manipulate and dictate how they should function. So let's remove this integer and go back to strings. So one of the methods we are going to talk about are methods that we can use to modify the cases. So you want to modify it to uppercase, lowercase, and stuff like that. We can do that. So the first one we're going to talk about is text.title, right? So let me create another word. So I'll say word 1. I'll call it welcome. Okay, I call it welcome. Now this welcome, I can print it as title. So I'll say print word 1 dot title, right? So what does it do? It returns the W in the word to an uppercase. Oh, sorry, title is a method, right? So methods are always invoked using this parenthesis. The print function is also a method. So every time we use print, we need parentheses. So in our case, we need title, so we also need to put parentheses in front of it. So you see, it turns the W to an uppercase. Now, assuming we have a word called let's say word 2, okay, and it is all uppercase, like hey. Okay, now I can do print word 2 dot lower. Remember, it's a method, so we invoke it using the parentheses. So when I run it, you see it converts hey to lowercase. Then we can also do dot upper. So we can take word 1 now and do print word 1 dot upper. So when we run it, you're going to see welcome as uppercase entirely. So another thing we can also try is to use things like removing space between words, right? So let's say you have space in this word. Okay, let's create another variable. I'll call it word 3. Word 3. So word 3 should be equal to word 3 should be equal to dog, right? But we'll create space before it. So I'll say dog, then space after. So with this, I could simply say print word 3, right? I'll simply say print word 3, and of course we get dog with space beside it, right? So but for us to remove this space, I'll simply do dot strip. So it removes space on both ends, and now you see dog is printed properly. But imagine you don't want space on both ends to be removed, right? So you can simply do so you say print word 3 dot let's say r strip. So it will remove the space on the right side. So you see, although we can't see it now, but the space has been removed. Then there is also the one for L strip. So I'll do print word 3 dot L strip. This removes the space on the left side. Okay, so when I run the program now, you see the space has been removed for this one on the left side, and the one up, the space on the right side was removed. So those are ways you can remove spaces from a string. So another thing we can also do is to, okay, let's say you want to replace characters in a string, right? So what can we do? We can simply say what3 dot replace. So replace, what should we replace, right? We want to replace D, or let's say we want to replace O with I. So the character we want to replace comes first, then the character we want to replace it with comes next. So we replace O in dog to I, and now when we print what3, we get dig and no longer dog. Okay, something is wrong. No. Okay, I know what's going on. Oh no, I don't know what's going on. Okay, so let's print it directly. So I do print what3 dot replace this with that, so we get dig, right? So what we should actually do is replace the variable, we assign it to something else. So let me remove the print. So we assign it to another word entirely. So we do word4 should be equal to w3, and then when I come here and print word4, right, so I get dig. And for you to know it works, so we can change this to A, so you see we get dag, something like that. So sorry about that delay, it's been long I work with Python. Alright, the next thing we're going to see is we can check the contents of a string to know if it contains alphabets or numbers or whatever it is. So the first one we can do is to say print, we can have a string of that contain numbers, right? Let's say 1 2 3 4, right? Print dot a string no, is, I think, alpha. Yeah, it's alpha. We want to check if they are alphabets. So when we print this, we get a boolean value of false because these are not alphabets. So what we do is digits, right? We get true because the contents of the strings are digits. Then we can also check what does something start with. We can say print okay, let's say Paul, right? Print Paul that starts with, we want to check if it starts with a certain character, right? So we say, let's say PE. So when we run it, we get false because Paul does not start with PE. We can also say, okay, does it start with P? Then yes, it starts with P. We can also change it and add A. Paul starts with PA. Yes, it starts with PA. So these are so many other things we can do with strings in Python using Python strings. Earlier we saw some operations we can perform using strings, and like I said, I'll create a special video for F strings because there are so many things we can do with F strings. So that's all for this video. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment if you found this video helpful. And I'm sorry about the blunder I had earlier. It's been a while I work with Python, but I really want to work on this playlist and create courses on Python. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.